guys, welcome to Driving to the Hoops Basketball Diaries. I'm Clint. I'm in the beautiful little town of Pittsford, New York, right outside of Rochester. It's a cool little town, very holiday, festive driven town. It's a nice day today, and just was out thinking about some great players from the old school, kind of 80s, 90s, that time frame. Players that we forgot a lot about, these guys that had like these gaudy numbers or were exceptionally good at certain things, and we never talk about them anymore, right? So just a couple of players that come to mind, just as a reminder of how great they were, at least maybe for a small frame of time. For example, Michael Adams, a guy 5'9", 5'10". His best years in Denver and maybe Washington, he was still pretty good. But this was a guy that one year he averaged 27 points a game. I mean, that's that's all-star level numbers, and if he had consistently done that, who knows where his career would have went. But it was just kind of that one year he had like 27 a game, and then it's kind of sandwiched in there between a couple of 18, 19 point per game type of seasons. Really good player, streak shooter. He could be ice cold sometimes. Shot a lot of threes, but he could also get it going pretty good and get hot, and no one could stop him. Real quick, point guard, 5'9", 5'10", really short. He played about 10 seasons. Like I said, I think he started with Sacramento. Then Denver was his best years, and then he played with the Bullets. He was still pretty solid, and then I think he finished out with the Hornets. Another guy that you don't hear a whole lot about. I'm not really going to go by a starting five. I just thought we'd talk about some players. Is a guy, they called him the X-Man, Xavier McDaniel. This was a 20-8 kind of guy. He was kind of an in-between small forward, power forward. Extremely explosive, very intimidating kind of player. He would get in anybody's face, and there's even a video of him and Jordan kind of getting in each other's face when he was playing with the Knicks. Just could get up, like he had some serious up, and good mid-range shooter. He might struggle a little today simply because he didn't have that range, but as far as athleticism, explosiveness, mid-range jumper, willingness to go after the best player on the other team. He was glad to guard guys like Larry Bird and Michael Jordan. And then so the next guy is someone that I've always kind of reminded me of Xavier a lot of ways. He's a little more of a power forward. In his best years, he played with Denver, I think, for a short period too. But his best years were probably with Chicago. Is Orlando Woolridge. He was a little taller than X, but kind of that similar player. Very aggressive, high energy, could really get up. I mean, these were both guys that were in dunk contests. That's how high they could jump. And they loved going to the rack, And he, again, a guy that would give you well over 20 a game. Probably more so with Denver. I haven't checked his stats in a while, but Denver being kind of one of those teams that a guy could go to back then and average 25 a game because they just were all about offense back then. They didn't play a lot of defense. So the next, another guy that comes to mind is kind of the opposite of someone like Xavier McDaniel or Orlando Woolridge. Would be someone like Kelly Tripucka. This was a guy that, believe it or not, was in the top 5 in scoring at least once. He was one of those guys that could give you a lot of points. He kind of had the mid-range jumper, just solid kind of player overall, but could score a lot. He just got a lot of buckets. And similarly, someone who played for Portland. He played for a couple of teams, the New York Knicks as well, Kiki Vandeweghe. You don't hear a lot about him, but again, a guy that could get you up around 25 a game. Just, one of those automatic, if you left him open, it was 2 points. And he would average a lot of points. It wasn't like he had a 25-point game here and then an 8-point game there. I mean, these were guys that were legit. They were legit stars on their teams. And a couple other guys we don't hear a lot about that were almost franchise-esque type players. Was like Jim Paxson, a guy that John Paxson's older brother. He was a really good player. He may be more remembered being with Boston because he was a part of that good run they had. But in his prime, he was with Portland, and he was he was really good. He was up around 20 a game, one of those kind of guys that could really fill it up. Sidney Moncrief, he gets talked about a little bit. I remember one time talking to a guy who was a lot older than me. I'd just been in the military, and he worked on the base there, and we were talking basketball. He was from Arkansas, so that's probably why he said this. But I said, I don't remember his name. I said, who do you think is the best basketball player? And he didn't even hesitate, and he said Sidney Moncrief. Granted, he was from Arkansas, and Moncrief played college ball in Arkansas, so that's part of the reason I'm sure that he said that. But a lot of players talk about how great Sidney Moncrief was. He was one of those guys that he played both ends of the floor. You know, guys like Trapuka and Vandaway and even Xavier and Orlando, as you know, intense as they were, they didn't play a lot on both ends. But Moncrief was an overall great player. He could kind of play multiple positions. He could get in there in the 1, 2, 3 spot. And just do a lot with the ball. He could score, he could defend. He's just a good all-around player. And maybe that's kind of why his thought was Sidney Moncrief, you know. Doesn't, you know, the exception that someone would say that certainly isn't the rule, but there's some merit to that because he was so overall such a good player. Another two players, they get talked about some. It's funny because I'm talking about this first guy. People think, you know, who was the guy who scored the most points in the 1980s? And when you're talking about the 1980s, for a lot of people, that is the golden era of NBA basketball, for me included, with Magic and Larry and Dr. J and Kareem and of course Jordan and Barkley and Ewing and Hakeem and Malone and Stockton. All those guys kind of come out of the 80s. It's pretty fascinating to understand that Alex English, a guy that a lot of people never even heard of, scored more points than anybody in the 1980s. Kind of an interesting fact. And he did it with Denver. Again, Denver was one of those teams that didn't play defense. They were, you know, run and gun. They scored a lot. But they were good. You know, they were a solid playoff team. And he was the main reason for that. He scored a lot. He shot a great percentage. He was kind of in between a wing and a forward. He played primarily around the paint, mid-range, but he wasn't huge. He wasn't explosive. He wasn't, you know, the sexy player. He got it done. It was 30 a night, every night. And a guy that kind of had a similar career, if you look at their parallels, was a guy named Adrian Dantley, who was also an explosive 30-point per game scorer. And he was someone that shot a very high percentage. Quite short for his position. He liked to get into the paint. Wasn't a leaper by any means. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of that Lofton Jr. guy. Plays at Louisiana Tech right now. He just kind of bully balled into the lane, and he didn't have the size of Lofton does now, but he just knew how to work angles. He got to the free throw line a lot, and he could fill it up. And he led the league in scoring, I think at least once, maybe twice. He's one of those kind of guys that just give you a quiet 30, 35 every night, and shot a great percentage as well. So a couple other guys, you know, that kind of come to mind. Tom Chambers, this was a guy that could explode for 30 any given night. Dell Ellis, another explosive scorer. But one that I've always been fascinated with was a guy who started his career in Philadelphia, that first team that Dr. J came to with Daryl Dawkins and a couple other guys. His name was Lloyd Free at the time, but he then traded to the San Diego Clippers and then ultimately a couple other teams, Cleveland. I think he played Cleveland the bulk of his career maybe. But his best years were with the Clippers. And this guy, he was up around 28, 30 a game, back-to-back seasons. Franchise player in Cleveland. They didn't have anybody else. He was it. And if you go back, there's a interesting game. I think it's Cleveland, when he was still in Cleveland. I could be wrong about this, but it was when he was playing rookie Jordan, and he was lighting Jordan up. And of course, by then World B. Free was old, but World B. Free, I guess I forgot to mention is what he goes by now. He was Lloyd Free when he initially came in. World B. Free, he changed his name to later. So just an explosive player, had that high arc, interesting kind of behind his head shot. He had some hop too. He was 6'1", 6'2", built like a tank, liked to kick his legs out. Wanted, to kind of explain how he played, because he doesn't get a lot of attention. He's one of those forgotten superstars from that era. And to me, a lot of these guys, and some of them are in the Hall of Fame. I know English and Dantley are. Maybe a couple others there, but most of these guys aren't Hall of Famers, and I kind of feel like World B. Free's getting screwed on that deal, and that maybe he should be in the Hall. He's a franchise player, and he was an all-star many times, and it's kind of a unique character in NBA history. One of those guys that if you saw him play, you knew he was good. But I urge you guys to go and get on YouTube and look up some of the highlights of these guys. You'll be surprised how good they were, especially like Xavier and McDaniel and then Orlando Woolridge. These are guys that could fill it up. They had a lot of dunk highlights, exciting to watch, and they were good players. All these were. Tom Chambers, like I said, Dale Ellis, Jim Paxson. I mean, you can go on and on. There's probably a lot of guys I'm forgetting. I'm kind of limited on time. Maybe we can come back to this and explore it. But anyway, I'm glad you watched, and I hope you had a good holiday, and I hope you have an even better New Year's. Today's December 31st. I wish you all the best, and hope to get some likes from you. And please don't forget to subscribe. Again, have a good New Year's. See you soon.